Hey, it's Joe Glines. During our webinar last, I don't know, Tuesday, we were parsing some string for someone. They were trying to parse an address, and turns out they shouldn't have shared what they shared, so I cut it out of the webinar. But I wanted to go back through, and during the webinar we talked about you probably needed to have the solution to involve a regular expression, and so we didn't actually create the answer there. So I wanted to get back and actually demonstrate how it can be done and dial up a little bit more. Just string parsing is something I think a lot of us often run into. And so in my first example here, I'm storing the data in the variable text, and it's just 2 lines, and in this case it's a PO box, and the address is, there's the city, space, state, looks like maybe a couple spaces here, and then a zip code, a 5-digit zip code without the additional -4 at the end. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm gonna loop over my text variable, which is right here, using stir split, and I'm gonna look for either a new line or a end of line in a new line, and I'm going to parse over it. So this is going to give me an index, so every time it goes over, each line is going to be increment for the I. I could type out index, but I is a representation for that. Then each line is going to be represented by the word line, and so as we go over it, each time that will first start off to be PO Box 1533, then the next time Allen will be, you know what, I can't even say this, let's say my hometown, Capel, Texas 75019. Okay, a little easier for me to talk to. That will be, and I'm going to store that in address, and then, so this is the first one is actually, if the, and actually here, because I had added one. Oops. So the first time through, this is going to say, hey, if the index is equal to 1, let's store address in the variable. If it's, and then it'll basically go on. That first time through, it won't be equal to 1, so this doesn't do anything. Then it goes through the next one, and then the next time, the index is equal to 2. And so, also, just so if you're not familiar with AutoHotkey, you notice here I have braces after the if command to here down to here, and this one I don't. In AutoHotkey, if it's just one line, you don't need braces. So it'll just say, just take the next line after it. Don't worry about adding the braces, so it just saves you an extra, at least one line. So I often like doing that. Now, in the regular expression, let me explain this. So, the example, and I honestly forget, it might have been Mordecai, I can't remember. Somebody wrote out this something very close to this regular expression in the webinar. I like using named regular expressions. And so what you do is you, inside the parens, you add this question mark, capital P, and then you create your name, which in this case, the first one's going to be city. So this first, at the beginning of the line, it's going to start and say, hey, this first thing, look for any /W or a dash, and thank you, again, whoever, I think it was Mordecai, answered, I threw it in here. He said you don't actually need, someone said you don't need the slash if it's the last thing in between the brackets. So here are these brackets saying, what are we looking for? /W means any type of character, and so it usually inside brackets the dash tells you look for a range, like I would say like A to D, right? But the fact that this is listed last, he says you don't need to escape it. For me, I threw it still works, so I threw it in here just because I just prefer having it escaped. In my head, that's the way it works. So it's not needed, but it's just a preference of mine. And then the star means 0 or more of anything that precedes it. And then basically we say, let's go up to the first comma. And so basically it's going to pick everything here that starts at the beginning up to the first comma, and store it inside these parens, which happens to be city. But the way RegEx match works is you have your variable, what I call the stem, which is address. And so it's going to concatenate address, this address, and then underscore, and then city. And that's why here in my message box, I'm throwing up address underscore city. Now this message box is Maestrith's function message box, which allows you to have multiple in one thing. So if I didn't have this, what I would be doing is each line, I would be doing address city, and then I could put like in a tab address state. But his function is just pretty cool, so don't get confused on that. But so it says go up to the comma, and then here's the beautiful part about regular expressions. So /s is any sort of white space. The plus means at least one or more of them, and so after the comma, we're going to look for one or more white space. So it could be either a tab or a space. And it can be multiple or singular. This is where in the webinar we were trying to use stir split, and then sometimes I forget if it was this one or this one. Sorry, these right here, where sometimes there's one space and sometimes there are two. And this is the beautiful thing about regular expressions, is it allows you to not have to build some crazy formula for parsing this out, right? It just says, hey, one or more white space. And then again, now here are the parens, right? So notice these parens. Now this is saying grab this next subpattern, and first off, I'm going to name it state, and this is what the question mark, capital P, and then the bracket state, and so I'm naming it, and then it's saying look for uppercase, and here's where the dash is, right? I should have noticed this in the webinar. The capital A to capital Z, so it's going to look for, and of course, if these things were lowercase, it would break. So this is one of those things you study your data and look at it, and before you actually write the regular expression, you decide, should I just say it's 2 characters, or should I say it's uppercase characters? Honestly, I'd probably switch it to just using 2 characters and not take for granted it's always going to be capitalized, just because I've seen enough bad data. And if it's 2 characters, you're probably spot on. It's the state. So in here, by the way, so this he did a good job of taking advantage of a lot of different things in regular expressions. So this brackets 2 means look for 2 of this. Now, if this was, by the way, if this was 1, 2, it would say look for 1 to 2. I think it's a comma that you put in between there. But you could put 4, 5, and it would look for either 4 characters or 5 characters like that. So it allows you to be specific, and in this case, we're just saying exactly 2. And then again, let's go for another 1 or more white space. And then I can't remember if I actually did this or he did. I think he had done this, but you know what it was? I changed where the dash, I think, was getting broken out, or I was considering it. But we're going to put in the zip 5, and so I have them as separate variables. Here's the zip 5, and then the /d says look for 5 digits. And so after the 5 digits, then we're going to say we're going to look for the next thing, which is going to be a dash. It's going to be a dash and then 4 digits, but this question mark here basically says this last thing in the parens, it's optional. It isn't necessarily going to be there. So whether it's there or not, it doesn't break the regular expression. So let's go ahead and see. I got something else running. Let me close it here. All right. I'm going to launch it and hit my hotkey. So here, this is the message box, right? It went through and it grabbed the city, the state, and in his Maestricht's message box function, each comma breaks the things on a new line, which is the really nice thing I like about it. So notice it didn't break. There's the zip 5. Now, if this had let's say a dash 1, 2, 3, 4, because I don't know what my 4 are. So the one thing I had considered was taking that dash out of the sub pattern, because I probably wouldn't want it in my actual data like that, but whatever, right? It doesn't matter. All I would do, I think, is just, the problem would be is that then this may not work. So let's see, it'll work this way, but if it's not there, because there's no question mark in front of it, yeah, see, it broke it, right? But let me see, if I was to throw in a question mark here, then it might say that's optional. There we go. And so that's how I can choose if I want. So let's go back now and add back the dash 1, 2, 3, 4. And now it should, see how there's no dash in front of the 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was what I probably would not include the dash in there. It just depends how you want your data, right? So there's no right or wrong way on that. But the question mark is a cool thing, because you can, excuse me, it is different. Like, first off, the question mark P is different in a regular expression. And then the question mark used in other places has, I think there's the look backward and look forward, right? I mean, regular expressions it's like a Sudoku that just gets more and more complex, right? You can really dial it up and down depending on what you're trying to do. But I want to have a real world example. Now, here's the next one is, let's say there actually was a name in front of this also, right? So obviously the first part of what we would do is this would need to change if we know, and this is also, I mean, we're hard coding in a number here, right? But what if sometimes there's two, and this is why I want to do it, is what if sometimes there is a first name in here, or for full name in the first row, so there's 3 rows instead of 2. So how would you, first off, let's pretend it's always there. So I'm just going to copy that, and here I'm going to put in, a 1, and I'll say, actually, since it's going to be 2, I'm going to break those out separately, right? So I'm going to say first name, and then I'm going to parse that on the space, because it's, you know, some people have spaces in their first names, so I'd probably want to do it a little more complex, but I'm going to use my good old friend stir split. Move this in here, comma, and I'm gonna parse it on the space, but now I'm gonna put a .1, and so that is, and then I'm gonna copy this and say 2 is last name. Oops. And then let's go back into our message box here. You know what? Let's just keep it in the order, right? So first name, comma, last name, comma. All right. Now this should, so it parsed them out. I could be putting in I could put it like this. But this would be putting in what they are in front of them, but that's just for, you know, clarity. But you get that, I think. Now, but here again, let's say sometimes there is the first, you know, the name there, and sometimes there isn't, right? So what I would do is build some logic. I don't think I'm going to do this entirely, but so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow this one, because I'm going to parse over that thing again. But actually, I think here, you know what? I can probably use the max rows, and I have an example. Hold on 1 second here. Let me pull up my syntax assist, my for loop. Where's my loop? For loop 2. Here we go. Because somewhere in here, loop max index. Loop object, but where is that for I and loop? Okay, so that is that max index -1. I'm gonna borrow that, and then I just need it for in, and it's that. So let me go back to Studio here. Maybe I can, let me comment this one out for now. Oh, actually, look at that. Holy shit. I didn't realize I had this thing here also. So I'm going to throw up a message box here. And now, actually, I don't want a -1 on this one. Let's see what it is. So that's 3. So notice what I'm doing is I'm saying the loop, this is taking advantage of, I've dumped this thing into an object. And the max index tells me how many rows there are. So let me say if I come in here and get rid of this row, this should say 2, right? And so now I know whether there's 1, 2, or 3 rows. And so that's where I could just do some simple logic in here that says, hey, if equals 3, if that equals 3, then go ahead and let's see, I would want all 3, but if it equals 2, so what I would have, I'm going to subtract 1 from I is what I think I'll do. If that equals 3, then I'm going to go ahead and do this, right? Because it has the first and last name. Oops. Oh, come on. I keep hitting the wrong button. There we go. All right, now it'll only do that if it's 3. And then And what I'm going to do, I think, sorry, I'm thinking here. If max index equals 2, I'm going to subtract 1 from I think is what I want to do. So let's see if this works. Clearly that didn't work. But you get the idea, right? I'll try here for one more second. Let's put back into 3. 3 should still work. Yeah. So if I equals 2, then I equals I minus 1. No, I don't want to subtract it from I, do I? Actually, let's just say t equals minus 1, and let's, because what I'm trying to do is to get this to increment by what? Minus t. Minus t. It doesn't matter on the case. Oh, they're all cases, right? All right, well, so that what did that got the first on that because it's there. That's interesting that oh, no, that should have I didn't put the paren, so basically this is a separate line here. Let me put this up in front of everything else. So if I equals 2, t equals minus 1. Oh. I want to make sure t is equaling... Oh. Wait a minute. Oh, there's 3 lines. So... minus t. T equals 0. There we go. Okay. So I had to first set t to 0, so actually the math would work properly. And now let's see what happens when I get rid of this line. Nothing. Perfect. So if t equals 0, and this should be, oh, t still equals 0. No, what? Oh, it is only 2, so. Now I'm confused. Hold on. So there's only 2. So t equals minus 1, which is what I wanted. This one shouldn't happen at all. And then I equals 2 minus t. Oh. Oh, it shouldn't be a negative 1, because I'm subtracting it. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay. So hopefully that made sense to you. I was subtracting a minus 1, which is adding it. And so now it still gets the city, state, and zip. I'm not sure, why did I lose the line? The street address. Address t minus t. Because we're getting everything else, but why did this one not work? Minus t minus t. Let me see. Let me go ahead and add the brackets. Oh, wait a minute. Because I'm subtracting it twice, I think. No, that's right. I equals. Let's see what I equals in this line here. So it equals 1. So why isn't address? Let's see what address street. Why is address street Oh, because I don't have it there. Okay, well that was silly. Where's my message box in here? All right, I don't need this anymore. I'll leave the brackets because it just doesn't matter. All right, so here we have the street address, city, state, and then the 2. But let's get rid of, let's add my name. And now it gets everything, right? So now it'll, whether it has 2 lines or 3 lines, it's grabbing from the proper rows and adjusting for it and storing them. This is where, honestly, this is where it is nice to have this spelled out. So I'm going to put a line break in here just so it reads a little better. Oops, not here. And the last one. There we go. So now we'll see them, basically the headers in front of each one, right? Looks like I forgot city here, but you get the city, state. So first name, last name, city, state, blah blah blah, and then when I come back in here and get rid of this, see how first name, last name are blank, but it doesn't mess with everything else is still, the street is proper, the city is proper, state, it's going into the right variables. Otherwise your data, things shifted like that because it's a different number of rows, it would really end up screwing up your data. So that would have been what we should have worked through in the webinar. Again, I didn't need this because I took advantage of having this loop object and getting the number of rows to tell me how many rows are there. And this is where you just keep using logic. You got to basically, and if it's new to you, right? I do this in my head because I'm somewhat familiar with it. But what I would recommend is literally writing it out and writing the logic first, not with AutoHotkey code. Write the logic out of what you need to do. Like, oh, if this happens, then I need to do this. And then once you figure that out and it makes sense, then figure out how to write it in AutoHotkey, right? Because it's really hard if you're trying to do both in your head and you're just doing it with code. I've done it enough where, yeah, you can see I still goofed around a little, but I don't have to write it all out, although honestly I should, right? It's definitely a smarter approach. I'm going to clean up some of this stuff here. Again, since this is a 1-line thing, I don't need the 2 braces. This one actually also, because this is explaining what it is, but I do need the braces because it's on more than 1 line. And then just the message box showing what's there. So that actually, you know what I could have done was the view variables list vars. Let me see how that looks. So this would show you all the variables. So that's an easier way to quickly show what variables there are and what the data is in it. I don't particularly like the message box it shows in, so I don't use that very often. But when you have a lot of them, it's very quick and easy to do. So that's it. Hopefully that helps whoever's trying to parse and address. And again, the regular expression, which I have a bunch on my website and we did a webinar on it, are amazingly powerful and complex. The other one, which is Jackie's favorite, was this RegEx, this regular expression site, regex101.com. It matches the Perl PCRE, which I believe is the Perl something regular expressions that are in AutoHotkey. And so if we were to take this text and put this here, and then come back in here and take the regular expression, which, although I'm going to have to get rid of the named stuff because I don't think that's supported in their tool. At least it's not supported in the same way. So let's get rid of each of these. Again, the names aren't required. You would use just to add a number to each one at the end if you didn't have them, but I like the names. It's just a lot easier for me to keep track of what it is I'm doing. There we go. Now, see, the nice thing with this is where it helps to write your expression is the colors are tied to what you're seeing, right? So here's the white space, right? There's the comma and then the white space. Here's the zip code, and then here's the last four. The question mark for the dash makes that optional in that one. Over here you can see how they match and what's in it. And then there's a lot of it actually walks through exactly which one's doing what. It's really nice because this, if you're new to it, can really explain. Pay close attention to this, because in a regular expression they can be complex, and suddenly you're really confused. You think it's doing something, it's doing something else, and really the devil's in the details on this of like what's working and why it's not working. But that's it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy that. Thanks. Cheers.